Well, hello YouTube, it's me Fortmaster, and welcome back to another Spooky Dude reaction. And, well, this is reviewing your Deltarune Chapter 3 and 4 theories. 20 theories, review, and analysis. So obviously this is another one of Spooky Dude's, user-submitted theory, review videos, which honestly I just love because I love seeing, all the different ways that people think, all the little different ideas that people come up with. Honestly, I'm really sad I sent in my 6 theories so late that they're obviously horribly, fake and, out of date now. Honestly, I have 3 that I've come up with since the release of chapters 3 and 4, but I'm still kind of working them out, and I want to release them as their own video before I send them to him, just so I can, get all the all the little nitty-gritty stuff about them worked out. But I mean, honestly, I've liked every single one of the other, theory review videos that he's done, so I mean, might as well get this thing started then. So yeah, of course, as always, original videos linked in the description if you haven't seen it yet for some reason. Corner video linked to my Let's Play of the day. And if you like this video or any other video that I make, I'd very much appreciate it if you gave the video a like and subscribe to my channel, because almost 3/4 of the people that watch my videos aren't subscribed, and I'd very much like that to change, because my main goal for this year is hopefully hit 10,000 subscribers. Yeah, with all that out of the way, let's get this thing started then, shall we?
Theories. Who doesn't love them?
Oh god, I miss you.
Early last month, Deltarune Chapters 3 and 4 released, and I threw a few of my own out there. Woody Theory 2, the story of Deltarune being a false retelling of the prophecy, Des being the knight and having some sort of Chris parallels, and more. And yet, even still, I have so many more ideas. But there's just not enough time, and I don't have enough fingers to type up hundreds of videos before the oddly close-feeling 2026 release date of Chapter 5, so I've called upon you. Before Chapters 3 and 4 released, I reviewed 50 theories that you guys emailed to me. Then I reviewed 65 more theories because you all seemed to enjoy the first one so much. And so today, I'm doing it again. You've sent me the theories, and as long as most of you Undertale fans can read, I think we're in for a good one. Make sure to like and subscribe. My name is Spooky Dude. Make sure to subscribe to my new channel, Spooky Vision, for upcoming horror content. Yes, that's still coming soon. Now let's discuss. Ultra fast recap. I put the name of the person who sent me the theory on the bottom. I then rank it out of 10 stars. Please don't take these rankings personally. I'm just ranking them based on how likely they are. Sometimes I also add a second ranking for how much I personally would want them to happen. But, that's rare. Alright, let's get into it. Theory number 1. This one was sent by Laytonio. Toriel turned December into the night. Now, this might sound totally crazy at first, especially to all those Asgore truck theory believers.
God. Okay, so wait. Toriel turned Des into the night. How would that even work? Because, well, I mean, one, we don't know, how Des is in the night, whether she's just, doing it as herself, or one of my other mini theories is that, it's the night is only a piece of Des or something like that. But how would Toriel have done that? Unless it was, a major accident or something? How?
But there's actually a pretty good amount of evidence. It mostly revolves around this scene in the Ice Palace in Chapter 3's Mantle minigame. In this room, you control Chris and this black monster simultaneously. You're supposed to use the black monster to step on a switch, and then walk over to Chris so that they can kill you. Now, in a YouTube video by JuiceCube, it was discovered that Noelle in this minigame, who was represented by this white cloak, uses a placeholder sprite of a deer. This is only a placeholder, though, used in the editor, though it's obvious that the reason it's a deer is because it's meant to represent Noelle.
Yeah. Which, okay, so honestly, I've asked about it before, and again, talking about, really wanting a Deltarune art book, but I really, again, so I know where he's going with this, because the whole thing is that what switches the placeholder, what switches the sprites, from their placeholder deer to the, the ones actually used in game is a modifier called Toriel that when it's set to true, it gets switched to the new, the new sprites. But if it's set to false, they use the placeholder sprites. Now, that just seems needlessly complicated for what you think could be accomplished with just a simple asset flip.
This black monster also has a placeholder sprite, a black deer. Now, you could write this off as non-canon because it's a placeholder sprite. However, there's a variable in the code called Toriel that, If false, turns the black monster back into the black deer, and if you manually change the value yourself, it actually works in-game. Huh.
Yeah, that's
As
again,
long
that's
as
so
Toriel is set
weird.
to true, it's a black monster. That's super weird. This was definitely intended to be found because of the variable name, as well as the fact that it cannot be set to false in-game. It's always set to true, meaning it has no reason to exist. There's even more, though. Toriel has an odd reaction at the end of the knight fight. If the knight wins the fight, Toriel can be seen sleeping peacefully. However, if you defeat the knight, for whatever reason, Toriel's face is contorted and she looks like she's having a nightmare. Why is she upset when the knight loses? Wouldn't she be rooting against the knight? Therefore, this theory states that Toriel created the knight in some way. Okay, I definitely think two things are true here. First off, the correlation between Chris and the Black Monster, the fact that they move in parallel, suggests some connection between Chris and the knight, as I've said in a previous video, and as many others have suggested in the past. Second, there is definitely a connection between Toriel and the knight that we don't currently know. At the end of Chapter 3, the knight shoots this weird beam at Toriel. Why? Well, again, we do not know. However, there's definitely a connection here that we'll probably figure out at some point in time.
You know, I just remembered, so I forget which video I talked about it in, but I kind of jokingly once said, with like the way Deltarune is turning out, how much you want to bet. I jokingly said that, like, oh, what if the true ending to Deltarune will actually be, like, not in the game, but will be in a mod that Toby will just release, like, anonymously on some site, and that will be the true, like, actual ending to, like, to Deltarune? Given, you know, all the stuff referring to the game's old code and how it can be, the game can be kind of meta in that aspect. But I just thought, so we get that whole bit where, you know, changing the modifier Toriel to false changes the sprite. But what if that ends up not being the only one? Like, maybe either, like, in future chapters or maybe in previous chapters that we haven't found yet. Maybe there's more, like, weird little modifiers or something like that where, well, we'd only get, like, the true ending of the game if you go into the code and start flipping a couple of random, well, seemingly random modifiers to, like, either true or false or putting in a different number or something like that. And only that way would, you know, the true ending or something happen. Because I did kind of say in another theory that I kind of like the idea or the possibility that, you know, the knight may be Des, but it's not all of Des. You know, with the similar, like, design parallels with, you know, the holes in the hands and stuff like that, and, you know, the whole thing with Gaster being broken across all time and space due to following his invention. What if something similar happened to Des and she was broken into parts? Like, you know, whatever part of her now that's the knight, and then another part is her, you know, the unused text in the code that we've found multiple times. And what if finding the right variables and flipping them around, or getting the right combination of them, ends up fixing her? Who knows?
Do I think Toriel created the knight? Not necessarily. However, I am willing to suggest that, at the very least, based on this variable name, without Toriel, the knight wouldn't exist. So she could have played some part in whatever happened. I'm going to give this one a 6 out of 10. There is a connection between Toriel and the knight, for sure. If we are to assume the placeholder sprites represent Noel and December, with the Cloak and Black Monster sprites representing their Dark World forms, then there's definitely the possibility that the Toriel variable turning Des into the Black Monster is indicative of something, but again, we have no evidence for this. To be honest, considering Carol and Asgore are both basically confirmed to be very important to the deeper lore, it would be interesting to see Toriel and Rudy also get major revelations later on that tie them to the knight plot. I just don't know how Toriel would have caused Des to be the knight, unless she was like, hey Des, I need apples for a pie, can you go check that spooky bunker to see if there's any apples in there? And I don't really think she did that.
Man, can you imagine if all this time the bunker wasn't like anything nefarious or something like that? It just turned out to be a really oddly placed farmer's market.
Theory 2. This one is from Leah. Basically, it refers to the popular theory that there was an original fun gang prior to the one we play as, popularized, at least as far as I'm aware, by Lore Facts TV, and the video they recently posted that contains this theory. Leah's theory is related to the video. The video states that Des tried to seal a fountain, however her soul shattered because monster souls cannot exist outside of their bodies. Leah's part of the theory is that Chris gave their soul to December, and the Knight is a Chris-Des hybrid, similar to how we are a player-Chris hybrid. This is a really interesting idea. I'm not too sure how big I am on the original Fun Gang theory, because while I do think the Fun Gang is not made up of the heroes that the prophecy expected, I don't know how I feel about the original intended heroes to be Azrael and December. That implies that there was a Dark World crisis before that December and Azrael fully knew about, as well as, presumably, some of the adults in town.
Well, yeah, because thinking about that, really, I mean, if Azrael knew that this was still a threat, why would he just go off to college? Unless like whatever his form of study is somehow related to it, and he went off to learn like more history on it or something.
Was that roaring stopped? Is that why Des died? If there was a so-called original Fun Gang and that's how December died, that would imply the original Fun Gang failed at their mission, meaning the roaring probably would have happened, despite Rouse and all other indications pointing towards the opening of the Dark Fountains to have just started. Similarly, the Knight is part of the prophecy, so if Des was part of the original Fun Gang, who was the Knight? There's just too many questions with this theory for me to say that I'm really into it. That being said, certain bits and pieces of the theory can definitely be salvaged. December having gone on at least one Dark World adventure in the past could explain why she wrote the shelter code on the inside of her guitar, because she either wanted to remember the code or because she wanted someone else to find it and see what she had seen. Similarly, Leah's suggestion that Chris gave Des their soul isn't entirely out of the question either. In Andrew Cunningham's most recent video, he makes a pretty good observation. Raise Up Your Bat's lyrics could imply that December is the one who gave Chris the human red soul. The lyrics, which read, "Because I'm with you in the dark, with your heart as my mark which shall guide you the way through the waves." The words, "with your heart as my mark," imply that the mark was left by December, and that she may be the second speaker in the intro who redirected the soul to Chris. Then again, that is just speculation for now. Now, I do want to point out, we don't know whose soul this is still. It could be Chris's. It's likely Chris's, but we still don't have concrete proof yet. Carol is aware that we exist, and I don't think we've ruled out the soul as a sort of Gaster-manufactured device just yet. Therefore, Chris's original soul being what's powering the Knight Des fusion creature is plausible. This could also explain why Chris has supposedly been acting strange prior to the events of Deltarune, because they're using their soul for December. Either way, while it's plausible, I'm going to have to give this one a 5 out of 10. Don't get me wrong, it's a good idea, however we don't really have the evidence to back it up yet, and the mechanics of Chris giving Des their soul also hasn't been explained.
I mean, just thinking about it, that could be really cool just in concept, because, I mean, again, the whole thing with, like, monsters taking human souls is, that obviously, like, gives them a massive power boost. I mean, the whole joke is that, that Azrael's form once he takes, or that Azrael's form when Flowey takes all 7 souls, the first one, before he goes all weird floaty limb and floaty head, hyper god of death or whatever. What was that form called? A complete brain fart. But like I've seen a lot of people, talk about how that's, that's what Azrael looked like after he absorbed Chara's soul to bring their body back above ground. So the idea that, the Knight's form might not be a Darkner form, that might just be what Des looks like now that they're powered up via human soul. Like, that's a real, I like that idea. That's really cool. Because, like, again, it's never said that, the powered up monster form has to be completely in line with, their original form.
Presumably, Des has been gone for quite a while, and Chris's troubling behavior changes seem to have started relatively recently, so unless Chris used their soul to revive Des from the dead through some magic that we don't understand yet, I don't know exactly how it could be explained. Theory 3. This one is from Stray1239. Basically, Stray suggests that the final Dark World will be at the Holiday's house rather than the bunker. This is evidenced by Carol's strange hoarding obsession. We know she likes to keep things at her house, specifically at her house and nowhere else. Rudy talks about a time when Noelle made snowflakes to hang up at her office, but Carol took them home instead, and insisted on preserving them. This theory suggests that the reason Carol is doing that is because she's keeping tons of emotionally important items inside her home, specifically December-related items, so that she can trigger the roaring to bring back a December darkener using her dust, fueled by the power of all the objects in her home. Once the roaring happens, everything will be a dark world, so Des will effectively be revived.
Okay, I mean, I could definitely see that. Again, like Rouse did say, the whole thing with, darkeners based on dead peoples, they have to be, is that they're very tricky. So I guess, wanting to have just as much, memorabilia and just memory, like items with Des's memory in them, for lack of a better term, just to kind of like help. I mean, that could also explain why there was a dark world made in the church. Maybe, Gerson, like the Gerson Darkener we find, maybe he was a test subject to see if it was actually possible to do in the first place.
This is a good idea, and I think that we'll for sure visit the Holiday House at a later point in time once more. There's so many locked rooms and areas that we couldn't see, and Carol's definitely keeping stuff hidden. The Asgore December Conspiracy Room is surely going to be accessible at some point in time. So, the idea that the story will loop back around to the Holiday House and Carol's hoarding obsession will be given narrative relevance is a good one. That being said, my personal reading of the Carol hoarding stuff is similar to Kara filling the glass to the very top in Undertale. That's a way to demonstrate Kara's extremist tendencies. In this way, I think that Carol's hoarding is saying something about her character. Remember how in the past one of the ideas I've thrown around for Deltarune's ultimate point revolves around the idea that we're going to have to move on, but not forget the adventure we've had?
This is a little side thing I'm noticing here. Kara. I mean, I know there's no like genuine consensus on how to say their name. I mean, I usually default on Chara. But that is, I mean, some people, a lot of people do say it as Kara. So, that little similarity in the name there. Interesting.
In the way that Sans keeps the Deltarune world in his memories, and the Lighteners will have to keep the Darkeners in their memories, we'll have to keep Deltarune in our memories. Well, perhaps Carol represents the opposite of that. Preservation for the sake of keeping things going forever, without understanding that things need to end. This ties into what Susie says to Gerson, that she wouldn't write an ending. Susie's having a good time on these adventures. She finally feels like she has a purpose in life, and friends. But she's going to eventually need to say goodbye. Perhaps this is what Carol's hoarding represents, her unwillingness to let December go. Overall, I'm giving this one an 8 out of 10. I'm not sure that Carol is hoarding items specifically for the sake of opening a dark world and bringing back December, but I do think the hoarding says something about her, and that she is trying to bring back Des, so really it's overall a good theory. Theory 4. This one's from AJ. They suggest that the final line of the prophecy reveals that Susie is going to kill Noelle. After seeing the final prophecy, Susie insists that she'd never let that happen. The weird route reveals that Noelle definitely has a large role in the prophecy, as evidenced by her ice powers, and the Girl Finding Love panel clearly references Noelle and Susie in some way. This is why Carol is so cold to Susie, because she knows the prophecy. Perhaps the Dreamers and Holidays are trying to bring about the prophecy to save Des, and resolve it in a way that doesn't kill Noelle. Carol being so controlling over Noelle could be because she's afraid of losing her second child to a prophetic mercy-kill sacrifice that's written in fate. There's a high chance that, yes, the end of the prophecy revolves around the death of Noelle. However, I personally have one problem with the end of the prophecy. That being, if the final prophecy panel involves the girl in some way, there's a chance that Susie is misinterpreting it. Remember, Susie thinks she's the girl with hope crossed on her heart. And while there's a chance that this is completely wrong, many people, including myself, believe that Susie's misreading the prophecy, that Noelle is the girl with hope crossed on her heart. Because of this, if the end of the prophecy says something like, the girl must be killed by her love, Susie probably would read that as her dying rather than Noelle. The only instance in which Susie would read the last prophecy and believe it to mean that she will kill Noelle is if it said something like, the girl must kill her love, which she would then interpret as her, the girl, killing Noelle. But even then, that's doubtful because she seems to think that whatever it is this last panel foreshadows, Chris is going to play a part in not letting that happen. Not only that, but she says to Rousey, and obviously you wouldn't let that happen. And Rousey doesn't really have any strong connection to Noelle. To your credit, though, you would absolutely have a point if you said Noelle was being set up as a sort of sacrificial figure. The Jesus parallels, the angel parallels, there's definitely something going on with her as far as her role in the larger story goes. I feel like I say that a lot. There's something going on, but it's true. There is lots of imagery implying Noelle will have to be sacrificed or make some kind of sacrifice, but we don't know yet. That being said, you still might be partially right. If the prophecy says the girl will lay down her life, or the girl will be wiped away, or something like that, Susie could interpret that as it saying she will be killed, where in reality it's talking about Noelle, thus wrapping back around and making your theory correct. Ultimately, I'm going to give this one a 7 out of 10. I've got a lot to say about the final prophecy, but we'll have to hold off on that for now. Theory 5. This next one is from Goose. In Chapter 4, when Gerson describes the Lord of the Hammer story, which, in case you forgot, parallels the actual story of the game, after Chapter 5 he says there was only one more chapter. After that, it all stopped. Presumably implying that there's only one more chapter planned after 5, despite there being a 7th chapter on the menu. Goose's theory states that at the end of Chapter 6, we might go into the depths, or maybe something else deep in the code, maybe just the soul or the soul and Chris, or alternatively something that breaks the prophecy could lead to Chapter 7, like defying the prophecy in some way. I'm going to come right out and say that this is a 10 out of 10 for me. I don't want to talk too much about this just yet, because I think I'd like to reserve an entire future video for predicting Chapters 6 and 7. But what I will say is this: something fishy is going on with Chapter 7.
God, yeah, I know. What was it? What was it in a Half-Bred Chaos video? I learned that there's actually, intro animations for chapters numbering all the way up to Chapter 10. So, yeah, there's definitely something going on. Who knows? Maybe going the weird route, the game just ends at Chapter 6. But then, going the normal route, it goes on a lot longer. Who knows? It might be one of those things where, oh god, can you imagine? Next year, Toby, they release, the game gets updated, Chapter, 6 is out. Everybody's playing, everybody's having fun. Then when they play it, they reach the credits for Chapter 6, and it just continues. It just continues on to Chapter 7. And, with Toby not having said a word about Chapter 7 coming out at all, and then at the end of Chapter 7, Chapter 8, coming 2027. Oh, God. Though, then again, 2 chapters in a single year. Oh, God, that would be... God, they've already worked hard enough.
Toby has, notably, never confirmed how many chapters will actually be in the game, and has only discussed development up to Chapter 5. He's never, as far as I'm aware, uttered the phrase Chapter 6 ever, anywhere. So many people, including myself, have always felt that that's super weird. Gerson's reference to there never being a 7th chapter, despite the need for one to be written, also implies that there's something off. Finally, Ralsei, when talking to Chris at the end of Chapter 4, says, "I'll make sure we have a wonderful adventure tomorrow. The next day, too." Now, this could be chalked up to dramatic phrasing, but it's interesting Ralsei says tomorrow and the next day, implying Chapters 5 and 6, but not 7. We know that Ralsei has future knowledge, presumably complete knowledge of the future, actually, as not only was this sort of a main point of Chapter 4, in this scene, Ralsei also says that he hoped that if we were kind enough, when we got to this point, things would change.
Now... Oh god, again, continuing on with the idea that, that Ralsei, knows what's going to happen in the future. And the idea that, the prophecy only goes up to, chapter, 5 or 6 or something. Can you imagine if the game really did extend past there, but past the prophecy, I mean, and, what would Ralsei's reaction to that be like? Would he be, thrilled? Or, exceedingly scared now that they'd be in, literal uncharted territory for him, because now he literally has no idea what's going to happen.
Therefore, I think it's safe to say Ralsei doesn't expect another adventure after Chapter 6. But Gerson's whole point was that we need to have hope, that the future can be changed, that Susie specifically seems to have the power to change the future. So if it's true that Chapter 6 is intended to be the end, that perhaps it's literally called The Roaring, and the end of the world is at hand, then perhaps Susie will have the power to change the future, and write that 7th chapter that was never written. There are many ways you could interpret the relationship between Gerson's story, Susie, Hope, and the 7th chapter. Perhaps Gaster or whoever's plan is to send these 3 heroes out and to reinterpret the prophecy in such a way that the bad end doesn't have to happen, and that it too can be reinterpreted in a way that doesn't seem so bad. Alternatively, we know that only after being banished, the angel will meet with its desire. Assuming the angel is us, which I'm still not 100% sure of, that would imply that after the very end of the adventure, there's still content left to see, which could fit with Chapter 6's ending being us sent to the depth to meet Gaster, or, whatever.
The angel's one desire, to meet the guy that's been teased for literally a decade at this point.
What I mean is, if it's true that only after being banished the angel will meet with his desire, then perhaps, this theory is right, that Chapter 6 will be the intended ending of the game, after which we'll meet Gaster and have some other, silly shenanigans that lead to Chapter 7, the true ending, or the hope, with the hope crossed on your heart, Chapter 7, being the true ending. Either way, I definitely agree with this. Chapter 6 is most likely where the story is intended to end, and Chapter 7 will be the undoing of that ending in some way, through the power of hope and friendship and love. Theory 6. This next one is from Pie Munch, and honestly, I don't even know where to start here. This one is kind of crazy. Remember these clown stickers? The loose clown stickers, which were from the app called Line, a messaging service? Many people realized after Chapter 1 that Jevils' lines were referencing this series of stickers. Metamorphosis and I Can Do Anything specifically. This could be seen as a pretty simple reference, but if you look deeper, it gets a bit crazier. There's one of the clown holding a phone that says, "No contact," which could tie into Spamton's backstory when he lost contact with the man on the other end of the phone.
The balloon colors! The balloon colors! Is that where the pink and yellow came from?
And there's also one where he holds a pink and yellow balloon. Sure, this could be one crazy coincidence, but there's something else. This sticker of the clown saying, "Suit yourself." Gerson himself says this line, and his pose when he dodges is clearly in reference to this clown sticker. You could also argue, as this theory does, that the break sticker where the clown has a teacup on a table is referenced by Gerson having a tea party with the Fun Gang. Suddenly, it stands to reason that the entirety of the clown stickers should be under investigation. This theory states that the other clown stickers could be referencing future secret bosses in some way, and we could use the stickers to predict certain quotes, traits, or actions future secret bosses will take. This theory draws connections between some of the existent clown stickers. Grinning might be referencing image_friend. I Am a Protagonist could be referencing the vessel, as its motivations could lead to it wanting to be the protagonist. After all, as we've gone over in the past, it seems like the intended hero of the adventure was never Chris, but was instead the vessel, the cage with human soul and parts. Alternatively, it could reference Susie, but I personally have a hard time believing we'll have to fight her to get a future Shadow Crystal. The helpless clown sticker could reference Chris, as they are relatively helpless. So, could any of these four characters be the next secret boss?
No motivation.
I think that Friend and Vessel are the two best candidates, especially considering the field of pink and gold being spoken about by Gerson, and the pink and yellow balloons being held by the clown.
Actual shape. So dangerous, it's gray, no motivation, completely without color, change, kind of like changed color, and then actual shape. What would that be referencing to? I mean, I could either say that being, the actual shape of the night, showing that it's death, or our actual shape. Who knows?
Why are those balloons relevant? Well, remember the one sprite we got as a teaser for Chapter 5? The blue balloon? Maybe there's some kind of connection here. That being said, there are four other interesting stickers. Dangerous, showing a scary version of the clown's face. No motivation, showing the clown's face as white and tilted. Change, showing a scarier alternate version of the clown. And actual shape, the clown taking off its mask and revealing its real face. Theoretically speaking, these stickers could be referencing the Knight, as this theory states, as the Knight changes form, can take off its helmet, and more. I personally am actually going to say yes to this one. You might have a point. I'm giving this one an 8 out of 10. I personally don't have any ideas as to how these last few sprites could be referencing any character outside of image_friend. I think while it's possible it's all just silly references, we might get some character who says actual shape or I am a protagonist in a line of theirs. That being said, it's really hard to predict outside of existing characters, of which there are only a handful that could be secret bosses. My money is on image_friend, but I really like this idea. Theory 7. This next one's by Top Bendy Gaming. The theory states that Des made countless dark fountains close together in a short period of time, and all of the dark fountains except for the Castletown fountain condensed into a small titan around Des, destroying her body but not her soul. In the process, the small Titan became the Knight. The soul inside the Titan gave it a consciousness. Des's soul and the Knight are similar to us and Chris, with Des having control periodically. When Des is in control, that's when they call Chris on the phone. The Knight looks like both a deer and a Titan. I'm going to have to go 4 out of 10 with this one.
I mean, a small Titan? I mean, I could see that, but at the same time, that's very fan fiction-y material there right now.
It's a solid idea, as we don't really know what the Knight is yet. It's clearly not a regular old Darkener. Nor is it, a regular Lightener, because while Chris does, imply that they can take off their helmet, I mean, just look at it. There's no way that's a Lightener. I mean, we don't have those kinds of powers, right? And it's made of that, black crystal, so it's got to be something. The idea that it's made of whatever the Titans are made out of makes sense, considering the mostly black body with white outlines. That being said, there are a few problems I have with this theory. First off, I don't think it's Des that was calling Chris on the phone, considering the cell phones don't work in the dark world, and when the caller says, "I'll be right there," Carol shows up immediately after. Also, while this is a good way to possibly explain the Knight's existence, there isn't really much evidence to support it, as in actual concrete evidence in-game that points to this being something that happened. Now, that's not really a complaint against the theory or the person who sent it at all. There's literally no theory that explains what Des Knight is that isn't mostly based on speculation. However,
given that we literally don't have any information on the topic right now,
it's totally up in the air, I'm not going to be able to give this one a very high grade. Theory 8. This one was sent by Bob. The tail of hell is image_friend. Friend is clearly a cat, the tail of hell is clearly a tail, the tail in the prophecy is clearly made up of circles, and the cats and cat petters, Noelle's game she played, are also made of circles. Friend is tied to cat petters through his appearance in the Mike minigame, the mouse hand in the Mike room is also made of circles, the scrambled phrase by the organic is also referencing Friend. Lost where the forest should grow, the children followed the pointed tail. The poor children. He's the demon, the tail, and is likely tied to Gaster. This is a good idea, and I have to say, recently I've been much bigger on the idea that image_friend is going to be important. Out of everything in the sweepstakes, Noelle's cat petters stories are one of the only things that were never fully explained. The tail of hell is made of circles, and is probably the pointed tail. Another image in the files of the game explicitly shows a point at the end of the tail, which could mean that, yes, the pointed tail is the tail of hell.
Yeah, and then, it's one of those things, like, we see, image_friend appear in Chapter 2, at first when you're doing Spamton. Then, we get teased again about Friend when Ralsei's describing what a Darkener is in Chapter 3. That can't be for nothing. There has to be something going on there.
Logic dictates that considering it's made of circles, this could be referencing image_friend, the strange evil cat from hell, which does actually exist in Deltarune. The only problem I have with this is the Chapter 4 prophecy and who exactly wants what. Let's break it down. The prophecy has been written in Fate. Ralsei wants to alter the prophecy because the ending is bad. He knows, however, that it cannot be done. He does wonder, though, that if it could be done, would it even be worth it, or would the ending be worse? On top of that, the prophecy itself must be called into question, as our following of the prophecy seems to be an altered variation of what's supposed to happen, which likely involves both Noelle and the vessel, not Chris and Susie.
Yeah, and again, there's the whole aspect that, the prophecy's been passed down, through so many, it's been passed down for so long that, people might not know the whole thing anymore because, it's just been lost over time.
Does Gaster want us to fulfill the prophecy? Because the organic says the tale that must be followed, as in the story that must be followed, T-A-L-E, and then the tale that must not be followed, as in T-A-I-L. So the being that sort of governs the prophecy, or the beings that govern the prophecy, don't want the tale of hell to be followed. So then, most likely, Gaster wouldn't want the tale of hell to be followed either, right? But Gaster is also associated with hell, so what's up with that? Could it be that Gaster actually doesn't want the T-A-L-E story to be followed, but does want the tale of hell to be followed? That Gaster wants some alteration to the prophecy? That the original... I don't know.
It's very confusing.
This is one of those weird knots that seems to be, so hard to figure out that it really needs to be untangled in its own standalone video. What does every character actually want from the prophecy? Where does everyone stand? And what layers of crazy filters are changing the way we understand references to heaven, hell, the girl, and more? Overall, I give this, though, a 10 out of 10. Image Friend is definitely the tale of hell. And like I said, more and more over time, I'm slowly becoming accepting of the fact that it's going to be pretty important.
I just thought of. So, tale of hell, friend inside me. What if, the friend inside me, when and or if we meet them, isn't just like a cowboy or a Woody spoof. He's a cowboy cat. Or like a...
Theory 9. This one is also from Laytonio, who sent the first theory as well. The reason that pink and yellow is referenced so much throughout Deltarune is because Gaster has pink and yellow eyes, just like Spamton's glasses and Image_Friend. It's worth mentioning that the colors of the text telling you that you got the shelter key and use the shelter key are also pink and yellow. Here's what I'll say. The pink and yellow seems to be tied specifically to some kind of deep lore related to the shelter and Image_Friend. In terms of knowledge and relevance to the core of whatever it turns out is going on, I'd say that the shelter and Image_Friend are a little bit more, in the know or related to whatever is actually going on than Spamton or the Mike minigame that also features pink and yellow. My point is, there's so many references to pink and yellow, but the way I see it is it's more of like a descending pyramid where there's one source of the idea of why pink and yellow are important, and then a handful of references or ideas that sort of spill out into increasingly obscure references. I guess what I'm trying to say is, yes, it makes sense if Gaster has pink and yellow eyes, and that's why the colors are so frequently referenced. I would like to make one alternative suggestion, though. Say for 1 second that the prophecy is being misinterpreted. The original girl with hope crossed on her heart is Noelle, and the prophecy we're playing through is an alteration featuring Susie. Is it therefore possible that the pink and yellow, always used in contrast with each other, are meant to represent the two versions of the prophecy? The yellow being Noelle and the pink being Susie? If that's true, could it also mean that the tale of hell is Susie? That Gaster's trying to warn us against our attempts to alter the prophecy because it'll lead to a bad ending, instead wanting us to proceed with the weird route to get back on track with how the prophecy is supposed to go? Probably not.
Also, another thing I just thought of, involving Friend. There's the whole thing that, some people kind of forget sometimes is the fact that we don't actually know what Gaster looks like. I mean, we have the sprite of, him from Undertale, but it's never been actually confirmed as being, Gaster. What if Friend actually is Gaster? I mean, we've always seen, the sprite we assume is Gaster is always smiling, kind of, doopy or droopy with, the melty in the lines and stuff like that. What if, we actually, if and or when we actually meet Gaster, it kind of, shows where, he opens up his eyes, they show, they're pink and yellow, and then he gets, the wide smile on his face like Friend, and it's literally just the Friend picture on, the Gaster body to show his, the actual sprite or something like that.
Probably not. The tale of hell is probably evil Garfield, like we previously discussed. I will never not give in to a chance to speculate. 6 out of 10 for this one. I'm not 100% sold, but there's definitely a chance Gaster will have pink and yellow eyes. There's also a chance that it's just Image Friend who has pink and yellow eyes, and that's where the descending pyramid of iconography actually originates from. Theory 10. Alright, this next email is from Hulu, the streaming platform. Oh wait, that's not a theory, that's a spam email. This next theory is from Beetle, and it's about the line in the prophecy from Chapter 4. The angel, banished, will finally meet with its desire. They believe that the word desire may be wordplay. In Undertale, the words determination and refused have alternate meanings. Determination as in being unable to die or being able to reverse death. Refused when the soul is shattered during the Azrael fight and it fuses back together, as well as refusing to die. Also, there's acronyms like love being level of violence and EXP being execution points.
Yeah.
D as a prefix has multiple meanings. Opposite, reverse, remove, reduce, but the most important one is something derived from something, or to take away from. Sire has multiple meanings as well. Father, author, originator, and it used to be used as a way to acknowledge a lord when speaking. In a religious context, you could view it as a way to refer to your god. Putting this together, the word desire could mean the father who the angel came from, the originator of the angel's creator.
Okay, I mean, I could see that, but that's kind of stretches it a little bit. Because, I mean, with, determination and refusing, like, those, they're much more wordplay, more, like, yeah, they have the wordplay thing going on with them, but they're very much like you took, like, the two normal words and just smushed them together. Like, determinate, as in undie, and refuse as, as in refusing. Desire or desire? Like, that seems a little less connected than the other two, and it doesn't kind of stick as well.
The theory states that the angel is the soul, and by extension, us the player. Being banished means the soul's connection to Chris gets severed, and we get thrown back to the survey device or the depths. And the desire is the voice/Gaster, who most likely created the soul/the angel. Gaster being the father originator of the angel, and can also be seen as the author of Deltarune or the prophecy. On top of this, the word desire still works inherently. A lot of players' desire is defined Gaster. He even asked on Twitter, "Have you been looking for me? How wonderful. I have been looking for you as well." Wow, this is a pretty big one. Overall, I think you might be onto something. First off, I think even if the wordplay isn't intentional, which it definitely could be, pretty much everything you've said lines up with what we already suspect. Gaster is seemingly the creator of the soul in some way, or if not the soul, our ability to interact with Deltarune, and its world through the soul. He is also, as you've said, the desire of so many players, and the thing they want to find. Therefore, I kinda think your theory might be correct by default. As far as the actual wordplay itself goes, I personally think it's a bit of a stretch, but I see where you're coming from, and I think there's lots of potential. I'm just not 100% sold yet. That being said, is it definite that we're actually going to meet Gaster when we're banished? Are we even definitely the angel? I said earlier in the video that I'm not 100% sold in the idea, and the truth is I'm more like 99% sure of the idea. If the angel isn't us, who could it possibly be? Gaster? But Gaster is already seemingly banished, right? One of my biggest theories was the idea that Gaster's plan was to be pulled into the Deltarune world, banishing his heaven rather than the angel itself, which I thought was him. The idea was based on the idea that the prophecy states that the heroes will banish the angel's heaven rather than the angel. However, Chapter 4 confirmed Ralsei's prophecy was sort of prophecy fan fiction, with the truth being plainly spelled out for us. The angel banished will finally meet with its desire. At the end of the day, it's gotta be us, right? And what's our desire? Is it really to meet Gaster? In truth, yes, that would be my desire, and the word finally in there lines up with how mysterious the game has been about Gaster so far. To finally meet him would be pretty exciting. So yeah, I'm gonna give your theory a 7 out of 10. Even if the wordplay is not intentional, you are pretty much right about everything you're theorizing. Theory 11. The Crystal Purifier Theory, sent by Balam Beholder. This theory references the fact that Sham said there's only one Shadow Crystal left, and everyone in the fanbase seems to think there isn't going to be another secret boss after Chapter 5. But what if there is? What if, to purify the Shadow Crystals, as evidenced by the Twisted Swords recipe involving the Pure Crystal, we'll need another item that must be obtained from another secret boss? This is definitely possible, and there's nothing stopping it from happening. If this theory was in a theory review prior to Chapters 3 and 4, I probably would have been like, what? Sham never said that. Chapters 3 and 4 aren't out yet, dummy. No, I'm kidding. I would have said there's no chance this is true because all secret bosses are going to be crazy corrupted little guys who have a shadow crystal. But Chapters 3 and 4 demonstrated that there is no set formula for secret bosses.
Yeah.
The Knight was the secret boss of Chapter 3, and the secret aspect of it was surviving long enough to get the shadow crystal from it. Therefore, for all we know, Sham will tell us that we have to fight someone else in Chapter 6 to get the Shadow Crystal Purifier. However, I do have problems with this. First and foremost, as spoken about earlier in the video, there's a chance we won't get a proper pause between Chapter 6 and 7, as in the context of the prophecy, Chapter 6 is intended to be the last chapter. Therefore, it wouldn't be possible to meet Sham in preparation for Chapter 7.
I mean, you're saying that, and chapters 3 and 4 have proven that, we can't expect, a formula or something to happen. So who's to say that something doesn't happen where we're kind of like knocked out of the Dark World and then sent back to Castletown while still in the Dark World? I mean, it'd be weird, but could be possible. I mean, Rousey does it.
Similarly, Sham says that all we need is 2 more shadow crystals, and then we'll have enough to make something we'll quite enjoy. I don't see why they wouldn't mention that we'd need another item on top of that. For that reason, I'm going to have to give this one a 6 out of 10. That being said, even if not for the sake of purifying the shadow crystals, there is a chance that Chapter 6 has one last secret boss. Perhaps if we get the pure crystal, the game understands that we've defeated all the secret bosses, and forces us to fight one more in Chapter 6. I've always quite liked the idea of a Jevil refight, sort of taking everything full circle, but maybe that's just me.
Yeah.
Theory 12. This one is from Doge Cakes de King. I'm actually trying to get in the habit, in case you haven't noticed, of reading the person who sent the theory's full name whenever I talk about it. I didn't always do that in the past videos. Sorry about that if I didn't mention your name out loud. I'll give you a full refund for all your troubles. There you go. Just gave it to you. $0. Anyways, this theory is from Doge Cakes de King, and is regarding one of Toriel's lines from the ending of Chapter 4. When dancing with Sans, we see them dancing in front of an old phonograph that is presumably owned by Sans. Toriel says that she has not danced the jitterbug like this in ages, implying that she also owns a phonograph. However, we never see her own a phonograph. It's possible that the phonograph is in her bedroom, but it made no appearance in the Chapter 3 Dark World. Also, in the theory, they said that they interpreted the dump as Toriel's bedroom, and there was no phonograph there. So, where could Toriel's phonograph be? Well, what if, after leaving, Asgore took it? And it's at his flower shop. Do you know what phonographs are famous for looking like?
Flowers.
Perhaps there is a chance it'll appear like 3 other music player-based darkeners.
What kind of phonograph is this? Because, I'd assume this is, a modern one you can buy or something like that. But why does it have, a CD player for records in the front? Is that, how you store them or something like that? What's going on there?
Darkeners. Sweet Cap'n Cakes. What if, considering the phonograph is also a music player, it could be the estranged 4th member of the group or something, and its name could even be a pun, like Gramophone, like grandma with the character being one of their grandmothers or something.
I mean, again, I was just going to say, given that it's such an old piece of tech, it could be one of their relatives or predecessors or something like that.
Similarly, it could tie into Backwards' Undertale theory, as it would parallel Mad Mew Mew. The old Jitterbug samples Ghost Fight after all, so maybe this could sample Dummy. We might even get the Cyan Red Soul mode, which Mad Mew Mew uses. Okay, I'd like to break this down into a few different steps. Overall, I really, really, really love the idea of gramophone, and even if there's no evidence that made a tiny bit of sense, just the name alone is enough for me to give this a personal 10 out of 10 as far as how much I'd like it to happen. That being said, I cannot give it an actual 10 out of 10. First off, I'm not really a fan of Backwards' Undertale theory. It doesn't really do anything, and at the current point, it requires lots of stretching. There's no reason for it. That's my biggest problem. It's very reminiscent, if you don't know, of the George Lucas Star Wars prequel ring theory. It's a theory that has its own website, actually, that argues that the Star Wars prequels are actually masterfully layered stories that were designed to work in a sort of opposite narrative parallel to the original trilogy, giving the Star Wars saga as a whole a sort of ring-like structure where everything goes in a loop.
I've never heard of that one before.
I don't need an hour and 45 minutes to properly explain why this doesn't really work. It has 0 creative output while requiring unholy amounts of structural input. What I mean is, to actually align Deltarune with Undertale, but in reverse, you'll be limiting yourself greatly with what you can do. Suddenly you're thinking about the story from the perspective of squeezing it into Undertale's shapes, then figuring out what the story is actually about. For Backwards' Undertale theory to be true, it would require Toby to be thinking about it prior to actually shaping the story of Deltarune, because again, it's the shape that you need the story to fit into. It's like if I told you to write a western or a horror, you'd study the genre to figure out the plot structure and pacing before even thinking about the creative side of writing. But what you get as far as creative output goes when writing a genre movie is a film that aligns itself with some of the greatest of all time to tell a meaningful story that follows long-standing rules that elevate the story. Your horror movie will benefit, believe it or not, from following horror conventions and tropes. There is nothing that Backwards' Undertale theory does for the story. Walking away from Deltarune, we'll talk about the characters and themes and ideas and reveals and lore, not, wow, I cannot believe the end was like the beginning of Undertale, that was crazy.
Can you imagine that if that was like if that turned out to be like true and it was quite literal, where at the end of the game ends with Chris flying up into a hole in the sky, to kind of like mirror like Frisk falling into a hole in the ground. Oh god, that'd be so stupid.
Because outside of the general idea of doing something like that, there's no point to it. The only world in which I see backwards Undertale theory making any sense is one in which the ending of Deltarune creates Undertale, which would allow you to argue that because the game was Undertale backwards, it sort of forms the Undertale and Deltarune games into a sort of ring-like narrative strip. Oh, wait a minute. So yeah, backwards Undertale theory is a no for me. Back to the point of this theory in the first place, though, there is no indication that Sans owns this phonograph. As a matter of fact, Toriel confirming that she hasn't listened to the song in a long time indicates that it belongs to her. After all, why would Sans, in the pouring rain, bring Gramophone from his convenience store, which makes no sense for it to be there, to Toriel's house?
Yeah.
There doesn't really seem to be a point to that.
Also, of all the characters that would own a gramophone, like, I could believe, Toriel could, own one. Even if she's not old enough in this universe, given that, I assume she's aging normally, given that Azrael's still alive. She just seems like the kind of, like, older style personality that would own something like that. Sans, on the other hand, does not seem like the kind of person who would own, like, a gramophone and records.
Also, lots of items in the Dreamer home don't turn into Darkeners, so the phonograph being absent from the Chapter 3 Dark World doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't mean that it's not in Toriel's house. That being said, again, I love the idea of Gramophone, and I think that's a really funny name, and it would be cool. However, unfortunately, I have to give you a 5 out of 10. Theory 13. This one's from Julian. If you check the Titan when it's regenerating, it says Titan. It seems capable of regenerating if not fatally wounded. Because the Snowgrave spell is described as fatal, this theory states that we might actually be able to use Snowgrave to kill Titans on the weird route. I'm actually a big fan of this idea. Considering the regular route is going to involve us trying to subvert the end of the world through some kind of Susie-powered hope magic, or alternatively falling victim to the depressing and sad end of the prophecy as Ralsei expects, the weird route involving us killing Titans using Snowgrave makes sense. If for whatever reason we can't seal them like we did in Chapter 4, using Snowgrave on each one as a way to kill them makes sense. It also aligns with how in the fight, one of the goals is to gather as much TP as possible, which takes quite a while. Fighting Titan after Titan, using Snowgrave to defeat them all, and gaining TP so that the fights still feel weighty to an extent, would be really cool. This also works if we do indeed possess Noelle and fully split from Chris. Using Noelle as our new vessel, we could use Snowgrave over and over and over. I think, like I said, this is a cool idea. I'm going 10 out of 10. Theory 14. This one's from Wasted Scoundrel. Deltarune. Extreme and far-fetched theory. It's totes true. Caddy is the knight, or alternatively, she's going to play a way more prominent role. The evidence? I like Caddy. Yeah, okay, this is obviously more of a joke theory, but I am surprised at how little Caddy's role was in the story, especially with the naming in the intro including her, and the Jockington Grows a Beard teaser. So many people, including myself, really believed that Caddy and Jockington would enter the Dark World and join the party in Chapter 4, and they just didn't.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with this per se. It turns out Toby just had different plans than we expected. But it does... I don't know, it is still odd that they are named in the intro while other way more prominent characters aren't. For that reason, I still think it's possible that they might show up in a future Dark World. At this point, I'm really pushing it with this theory, but if the roaring were to actually occur, realistically all the Lighteners that were named in the intro could show up. I'm giving this a 6 out of 10. She's not the knight, but she still has a chance to play a slightly bigger role in the story, even if it's just for one chapter. Theory 15.
I could definitely see
Tom
that.
and Jerry theory.
Tom and Jerry
This one's from
theory?
Jason.
What?
In Chapter 5, there will be a Tom and Jerry-esque chase sequence in which Sans runs through one of the backtrack doors but never ends up coming out because he ended up in Undertale. The reason Sans has 1 HP in Undertale is because Asgore beat him up in Deltarune. I want this one to be true because it would be very funny, but unfortunately I'm going to have to go 3 out of 10.
Yeah.
The pieces are just not there. Theory 16. This one's from JB.
I mean, again, we've all kind of been theorizing, joking or theorizing otherwise that, how does Sans get to Undertale? If it just turns out he just gets there, like, just randomly, without even meaning to, like, instead of him, like, abandoning the world because, the roaring's happening and the apocalypse is happening, Like, that would kind of cheapen the deal. Plus, on top of that, how does Papyrus get into Undertale as well? Unless, the Papyrus we meet in Undertale is Undertale Papyrus, and the Sands is Deltarune Sands. Which, then how, what? So many questions, not worth the questioning.
In the point of the story we're at now, an Ice Ease pizza-based Dark World would be completely pointless, and there's no good way to fit it in. We only have 3 chapters left, and basing it off where we're at now, assuming Flower King becomes a Dark World, this chapter would not fit any way you put it.
Oh my god. I mean, that being said, who's to say that the entirety of Chapter 5 takes place in only a single Dark World? I mean, Chapter 4, we technically entered 3 separate Dark Worlds, even if they were all, like, in the same location. So who's to say in Chapter 5 we don't enter multiple Dark Worlds, but to kind of like to increase the ante or increase the odds or like the threat if they're in multiple locations.
Theory 17. This one is from Thomas. The chapters all have different icons showcasing elements from the chapters. This theory states that the icons represent the chapter bosses. For example, Chapter 1 has a spade for the Spade King, Chapter 2 has Queen's Face, Chapter 3 initially has Tenna's Smile, but changes to the Knight's Visor, Chapter 4 has the Deltarune, perhaps symbolic of the Titan we fight. I have to say 8 out of 10 for this one. It makes so much sense, but then you get to the Deltarune. That doesn't really seem to imply Titan to me, but then again, the spade is symbolic of Spade King, so you might be right.
I mean, it could be, the whole thing, more, not the Titan itself, but more like the prophecy. Because, like, the Titans are prophesized, so... I mean, that's kind of a feeble connection there, but...
Theory 18. Flaming says that the Mystery Man sprite is the man behind the tree, while the redacted sprite is closer to what Gaster will look like. I'm giving this a 5 out of 10. It's not that I disagree per se, but I think at this point the Gaster sprite has become so iconic, and there's that reference to the gash that weaves down as if you cry and the rivers of tears, so I'm going to say that Mystery Man might just be Gaster.
Yeah.
Theory 19. This one is from Boon Boon. Noelle is aware of the Shadow Mantle. I actually didn't know about this, and man, it's very interesting.
What?
So, if you debug the game, you can have any character equip any item, outside of, obviously, those they are not able to equip. For example, despite not being in the Chapter 3 or 4 Dark Worlds, Noelle has dialogue to react to some of the items. When you try to equip the Shadow Mantle on Noelle, she says, "No, it's for someone taller." This is odd because no other party members care about height. This is the only thing she cannot equip other than the mannequin, and the way she says it is very odd, as if she knows something. The theory states that the mantle was originally taken by Sham, but that in Chapter 4, Susie points out Sham is on Asriel's wallpaper. The line before she talks about Asriel and Chris's drawings, so this implies that Sham is drawn as well. That Sham was a drawing made by either Asriel or Chris. So Asriel has a mental image of Sham, and in turn their shadow mantle. So perhaps Asriel and Des got inspiration from Sham by having adventures in the Dark World. Asriel then went on to draw them on the computer, and Des must have told Noelle about the mantle, which is why she reacts to it. I'm going to say 2 things. 1, this theory is really good, but 2, I do have a point of contention. The idea that the drawing of Sham is based on something that Asriel saw is not likely. I think it's the other way around. Sham, prior to Chapter 2, was not in Castletown, they were in the Card Kingdom, and based on what Ralsei says about the fountains, the Card Kingdom was only opened recently. Therefore, it's unlikely that anyone met the Darkener version of Sham prior to Asriel leaving for college. It's interesting that Ram actually references Chris and Asriel playing pretend with King, Queen, and Tenna in the past, as if they brought home those objects to play with, creating those characters from nothing. Perhaps one of the reasons we haven't met Asriel yet is because most, if not all, of the Darkeners we meet are based on characters he and Chris came up with. After all, we know Asriel wanted to make games at some point, and the idea of drawing and coming up with characters with your brother is very Toby-like. Doesn't that exactly parallel what he did with his brothers when he was younger? He spoke about how Rals was the name of a character from one of those games, a name he would eventually reuse for Ralsei. So the idea I have is that Sham wasn't drawn based on Asriel seeing them. Sham and the other Darkeners exist because they were in Asriel and Chris's head beforehand. They were their creations. Their doodles in their notebooks. Of course, this is just, spitballing, but the only other reason that Asriel would have Sham on their wallpaper is if he's seen them, which makes no sense.
I mean, then again, Sham is, like, a stuffed doll when in the light world. So, the stuffed doll has to come from somewhere, whether it's just, something from, like on a store shelf, or if it's like a piece of merchandise from a show or something. I mean, maybe maybe the picture of Sham on the wallpaper is literally like a cutout version of like the advertisement for like the doll that Sham is, or something like that. I mean, like, I know Sham is old, but I very doubt he's like a handmade doll or something like that.
Either way, back to the theory at hand. Yes, Noelle reacting oddly to the Shadow Mantle means something. I'm giving this theory a 9 out of 10. There's always a chance that the Shadow Mantle was a cape or cape-like item worn by Azrael or December, and perhaps was lost in the shelter, hence its placement in the Mantle minigame. Maybe that's why Noelle reacts so oddly to it. Either way, I definitely think you're onto something here. Theory 20. This one's from Mr. Guy. For our final theory, we have the name of future songs. Basically, when fighting Bibliox, or any Bibliox enemy, there are 8 words that can appear. They are Gallery, Friendship, Sword, Roots, Atrium, and Guardian. Now, you might be saying something. Spooky Dude, you dummy, that's only 6 names. And you're right. Those are all song names from the game. However, there are 2 more. Festival and Synthesis. Additionally, the word amphitheater can be found in the code, but it cannot appear, perhaps because it's too long to fit in the UI for the proofread act. So, what do I mean here? Well, Gallery is obviously a song from the game. Friendship, Sword, Atrium, Guardian, those are all songs from the game. And Festival and Synthesis also appearing there could imply that those are 2 future song names.
I mean, Festival, I mean, given that, you know, the carnival for, like, the town is going to be coming up very soon, I can very much see where that would come up from. But what about Synthesis? Like, Synthesis is 2 things coming together to make a new thing. So what would that be? Unless, I mean, again, going to the whole thing that, you know, that you make the special weapons with, like, the Shadow Crystal or whatever it's called. Sorry, I'm forgetting. Like, unless there's, like, a special song for that? Which I don't think so. It would have to be something bigger. So what would be fusing with what? I mean, could it could it be, you know, Synthesis happening because the soul is going to a new host body? Like, either, like, to the Goner we designed, or maybe to a different character? God, that'd be weird.
Similarly, amphitheater being in the code could mean that that too is a future song name. The theory states that in the future we'll get 3 songs titled Festival, Synthesis, and Amphitheater. We know where Festival would probably play, at the festival.
Yeah.
Synthesis could reference photosynthesis, so that could be in the flower shop. The Amphitheater one is more up in the air.
I didn't even think of, you know, photosynthesis. Again, Chapter 5, Flower Shop. Yeah, okay.
There also hasn't been a song title just called Roots yet, though Digital Roots and Bit Roots exists. So perhaps next chapter we'll also get a song titled Roots, especially seeing how it is tied to image_friend. This is an awesome theory, and I'm surprised more people aren't talking about this. Yeah, I completely agree. 10 out of 10 for this. Personally, I think you're right on the money with Festival being at the festival, Roots being tied to image friend, and Synthesis referencing photosynthesis. As for amphitheater, I'm not sure. An amphitheater is an open-air venue used for entertainment, performances, and sports. The term derives from ancient Greek, and ancient Greek theaters were typically built on hillsides and semicircular in design. Thank you, Wikipedia. I'm really not sure where this could appear, but please tell me in the comments below. Wow, I can't believe we've gotten through only 20 theories and somehow been talking for just about as long as my 50 or 65 theories reviewed videos.
Geez, you almost gotta believe that, you know, you're getting better at this and you're going deeper into the theories. Who knows?
The truth is, honestly, with chapters 3 and 4 out, the theories are way beefier. There's so much more to talk about, so it's going to take much longer to get through them all. But I don't want you to worry. This is not the end of theory review. This is only the beginning. There were so many theories emailed to me. I mean, I kind of think I haven't, double checked, but over 200, I'm pretty sure. And I want to get through them all. It's probably going to take a lot more videos, and we've got about a year to do it all, so
yeah.
Look forward to more theory reviews in the future. If you want your theory covered in a theory review, make sure to email spookydudetheories@gmail.com, and I'll include it in a future video. Thank you for watching. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe. My name is Spooky Dude, and I'll see you next time.
God, honestly, so many things. I mean, just... Again, like... It's this strange inevitability feeling, isn't it? where like before, like when we were only at chapter 2, we knew chapters 3 and 4 were coming. We just didn't know when, because it had been literal years. But now here we have chapter 2. We have an actual release date, or at least a window for a release date of, you know, a year at the very least. And, like, the theories feel more intense now. Maybe it's because, A, we have more information than we did before, but also it's the fact that they're now, like, they're now definitely, like, ticking against the clock. Like, we have an actual due date that we have to try to, like, put out whatever we think before, you know, either being proven right or wrong. God, this is definitely a new era. Again, like, I need to get around to, you know, sorting out my little mini theories and maybe sending them off just to see what, you know, Spooky Dude thinks about them. But yeah, that's definitely going to be it for now. So, yeah, I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you have not, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.